Hiya, welcome back to my channel. It's Wendy here from Toonpish Crafts and I hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to be doing a project with some bottle moulds. Now I picked up a couple of bottle moulds from AliExpress and they come with corks and I was really excited to try them out. And it suddenly dawned on me that probably some other company had actually made these originally. So I had a check around and I found them on Let's Resin. Now Let's Resin make them with their corks and that got me thinking. Other things that Let's Resin make, including their light bulbs. So I thought, why don't we mix the two together and try some light up bottles? Let's give it a go. So these are the two bottle moulds that I'm using, which I bought from AliExpress. Let's Resin do make their own bottle moulds. I'm going to be using Vista Cascade. This was a mistake in hindsight, but we'll go into that later. And I'm using a pipette to put the resin, the clear resin, in the neck of the bottle. I didn't want the resin to go down the side of the mould, and resin is very static and will be drawn to the side of the mould. So by using a pipette I could get the resin exactly where I wanted it to. And a micro brush to get rid of the little bubbles right at the bottom. So you can see here that I'm using a black glove and a blue glove. Very coordinated of me. However, I just recycle my gloves over and over and over again. I turn them inside out when I finished resin, and 24 hours later I turn them in the right way and blow them through. So I continuously use recycled gloves. And obviously I didn't think to myself, oh, it's one blue and one black. So here you can see I'm putting in a beautiful red rose that I've dried myself in Silica Gel, and it's going into Cascade resin. Now Cascade resin is a medium depth resin, it's not a deep depth resin, and it does get hot. And when you're putting a flower into something that gets hot, it could burn it. Now I did know that, and I was short on time and decided that I would go for it. I shouldn't have done really. I should have gone with my instincts and done a 48-hour cure time deep pour resin, but I didn't. So we're just going to go with it and we'll see the results at the end. And I secure it up with a peg to make sure it sits where I want it to. So this is the second one and I'm going to be using rainbow colours. Now rainbow colours are amazing. I do love rainbows. Who doesn't love rainbows? And I wanted to get it spaced correctly, so I'm going to measure the mould and put lines on the outside of the mould so that I know where the next colour will come to. Now obviously I'm going to be waiting 24 hours between each layer, so this is going to take me a while and I am aware of that. But I'm still going to go for it because I love rainbows. So I've got it all marked up and I know exactly where the next colour will come to. I'm going to be using Let's Resin alcohol inks and I'm going to be using first the purple one. So I'm just mixing it up. I actually used 5 drops of purple in this and it came out really quite dark. But I was happy with that colour. I love purple, as you know. Anyone who knows me knows I love purple. What is there not to love? I have speeded a lot of this up for you so you don't sit through hours of me stirring resin. And hopefully I'll make a bit more of an enjoyable experience to watch. Now, as I said earlier, resin is static and will cling to anything silicone. It really will. If you're pouring directly down into a mould and you don't want it to touch the sides, there's really only one way to do it, and that is to pour it down an item such as a lolly stick. So I'm just showing you here that I've reached the first marker. Now you could pour the second layer within about 4 or 5 hours, but no, I don't have that time luxury, so I'm going to do it after 24 hours. So 24 hours later then, and it's time to do a second layer for the rose. I'm going to be using blue pigment by Let's Resin, and I'm just putting a couple of drops into the resin to give it a water-like effect that will go in the bottom of the rose bottle. That's the plan. And 24 hours later it's time to clip off the bottom of the rose stem so that I can put the silicone block in to create a void. So if you haven't seen the teddy bear snow globe that I made, check out the link in the corner of the screen. This is the same silicone block that I used for that, and I'm going to be using it to create the void for the light chips that work with the light bulb moulds from Let's Resin. If you haven't seen the light bulb mould video that I did on YouTube, then check out the link in the corner of the screen for that one. For now, I've cut a little tiny notch in the bottom of the silicone block so that it goes over the stem of the rose and hopefully will stop any bubbles and will sit flat. So using some more blue resin, I'm going to put some stones around the bottom. These are garden stones that I've washed. You can buy them in big sacks from garden centres. I've washed the stones. The little ones are aquarium stones, which you don't need to wash because they're already really clean because they go in the bottom aquariums. And I thought I'd put them in the bottom. So I'm trying not to create any air bubbles by putting the stones in and then a bit more resin and then the stones and then a bit more resin and then making sure packing them down to get rid of any trapped air that there could possibly be in there. And it does take a little time, but it's well worth the effort. There was no bubbles when I demolded this, absolutely none in the stones at all. So I'm going to let this cure over 24 hours. I'm going to get on to the next layer of the second bottle, which is Indigo. Now, as I don't have any Indigo ink, I improvised and used purple and blue mixed. I did make it a little too dark, but the principle is sound. Again, I'm pouring it down the stick because it's quite a deep mould and I don't want it clinging to the sides of the mould and have little bubbles of different colours all the way down the sides of the mould. It can be annoying. Okay, so it's 24 hours later and it's time to take the plug out of the rose mould. Now I have made it a little too deep, and because of that stem in the centre there is now quite a prominent spike. So I'm going to just chop that off and put a little bit of blue resin in there just to fill up and make it a flat surface. So these are the chips that come with the Let's Resin light bulb mould. They tap on and tap off. If you leave them on, they stay on for 30 seconds and then they go out, and that's battery efficient in my opinion. So I'm just measuring here to make sure that I'm not going to overfill the gap and I still have room for the light chip that's going to fit in the top. In the meantime, I do a next layer of the rainbow, which is blue. So 24 hours later, and I'm putting the light chip in the bottom of the rose jar, and I'm going to put some 1mm plexiglass on top and UV resin it to the entire bottom, hopefully taking out any chance of resin leaking underneath the plexiglass, because I really don't want to leak and the light not to work. So I put the UV resin right the way around the outside edge of the hole, put the plexiglass on top, push it down and use a UV torch to cure it up. I just want to hold it in place because I'm going to do several different coats of UV resin around there just to make sure that I've sealed every possible gap before I put a bottom layer of 2-part epoxy resin to make the bottom neat. So I'm giving it a flash cure with my torch. I'll then put it under my large UV resin lamp to cure it properly. This is holographic sticky film, which I'm putting on the back of the light chip to hopefully reflect the light down into the bottle. And finally I'm on to the last layer with this rose bottle. This is Hemway Black. I always decant the black mica powder because I find it easier to get out of a tub rather than the packet, and I'm just going to do a layer of black on the bottom just to make it neat and tidy. I do, however, need it to go under that lip so that we don't get silly air bubbles right at the bottom after we've paid so much attention to this. It's got to be done. So I'm just going to use a micro brush just to make sure I lift up the lip and all the black will go underneath the lip of the bottom of the base. And topping it up to the top. Now I'm quickly going to run through the colours of the rainbow bottle. I will whiz through this as quick as I can just so that you get an idea of what I've been doing. So we've had purple, we've had indigo, we've had blue, and now we're going to have green. The next one on the list is lemon yellow. Next is orange. So the next one should be red. Now this is a red, but it's called Sugar Light, I think is how you pronounce it. Not quite sure how you pronounce that, but it's red. And I'm just going to use the same red to backfill around the silicone block to make room for the light chip. And I'm just going to use the same technique as I did with the rose jar for putting the plexiglass and the UV resin on the bottom. So it's now time to demould, and I'm going to use silicone oil to help me get it out of the mould. I'm going to put it down the sides and it should alleviate the pressure to be able to get it out easier. You can also use soapy water. It takes a little time to get it out of the mould, so I've speeded it up again, and my hands got really slippery. It wasn't the easiest way. I think soapy water is better, in my opinion. So I got there in the end, and the rainbow bottle is out of the mould. It's covered in oil, and so are my hands, so I have to do a quick clean up afterwards as well. Time to pop in the cork for the final touch. And I'm just sharing a quick video of the rose in a bottle demould as well. It's only when I demoulded the rose I realised what a mistake I'd made with the resin in the first place. So I had to make another one, because I was not happy with this at all. The poor little rose had completely burnt. So, as you saw on the video, I did burn the rose. I mean, the poor thing, I really messed that one up. I was so impatient. I wanted it to cure in 24 hours, not 48, and I used the wrong resin because I was impatient. However, I did make another one. Now this one, obviously I didn't film because you didn't want to see the same thing twice, but I didn't burn it. Oh my goodness, does that look gorgeous or what? Now I also put a clear layer underneath the rose so that you could see a definite separation between the rose and the water. I couldn't get to the jelly stage, however, so there is a line, but I absolutely love it. I really do love it, and I will put up pictures of how it looks lit up because it's adorable. The rainbow one took me forever. I needn't have bothered doing two different purples because they look the same, and the orange and the red look the same as well. I think if I was going to do this one again, I would put a solid silicone block circle in the middle, put the colour around the outside, and when I take it out I'd backfill it with clear, so that the light that's shining up through the bottom is shining up through clear resin and not the red, because when this is lit up it glows red. Now there's nothing wrong with that, I quite like it, but it wasn't what I was going for, which is difficult, but I still love it. I love the colours, and yeah, I mean, this bottle mould is adorable. I could make so many, probably will actually. So yeah, thanks very much for joining me. I'm going to put some stills up of them in the dark so you can actually see what they glow like. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Come back and see me again next week. Take care for now. Bye.